Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide, and in today's video we are checking out the Bigme B751C 7-inch e-ink Kaleido tree color reader from Bigme, which is another entry in the already crowded and fairly competitive 7-inch Kaleido tree powered devices that we have on the market, because there's quite a few of them. So let's check out how this one actually fares. But before we do, this unit has been kindly sent to me by Bigme, but when I'm done with it, I then contact them and then send it back to them or onwards to another reviewer or something like that. And the second thing is that I invite you to check out mydeepguide.com/shop, where you can find the new edition, My Daily Organizer 2025 and 26 are now also available. So you can choose from MDO 2024, 25, 26 and My Deep Guide Meeting Planner. All of those things are available on mydeepguide.com/shop. And if you're wondering like what are these things, well, then you can check out the links in the description below, where you can have a lot of videos in dedicated playlists where you can find more about these products and see if they are something for you or not. But either way, purchase of any of these products directly helps the independence of my deep guide. And now, without further ado, let's check out the Bigme B751C. And here it is, Bigme B751C. This is an Android-powered Kaleido tree color e-ink tablet device that is both note-taking capable and e-reader. It is equipped with a front light, it has SD expansion capabilities, and it does have physical buttons for page flipping or other functions that can be customized within the settings on the OS. It is a 7-inch diagonal, and yeah, that's pretty much what the device is. Bigme B751C specifications are as follows. So as mentioned, it has a Kaleido tree screen with 300 ppi black and white resolution, 150 ppi color resolution. It comes with an included case and pen. It has an auto ghosting elimination process, octa-core CPU at 2.3 GHz, has no camera, it has 4 GB of RAM, 64 GB of storage, has a physical page turn buttons, it does have a micro SD card expansion slot with up to 1 TB. It does have a fingerprint unlock functionality, supports 2.4 and 5 GHz Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 5.0 protocol. Battery capacity 2300 milliamps. It is an open Android 11 OS, supports global handwriting, front light, yes, and here are the dimensions, with a thickness at 7 millimeters and weight at 212 grams. Now, one thing before I actually go on with the review and everything, while it does have global handwriting as a feature, yes, it does have it, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work properly. It doesn't work in any capacity that I would ever use or characterize as something that's finished and ready for use in any more serious, other than, hey, here's the thing that we can do, and then show you that it can do things. So because this is such an unfinished feature or whatever it is, it's a great thing to try, but it's not really usable in reality. I'm not even gonna touch it in this review. So I'm just mentioning that yes, there is this thing, but it's really far from usable or finished. Bigme B751C costs $230 if you buy only the device. However, if you switch to the option with the case and stylus, which in the specifications it says stylus and case included, which one is it? Like, make a choice here. Then we're talking about $280, which is still cheaper than Libra Color, because Libra Color with the stylus costs like $70 and the cover is $40. For the Libra color, for example, the stylus and the cover are $110 on top, which amounts to $330. However, the device only Kobo Libra color is $220, which is $10 cheaper than the Bigme B751C, and it is also note-taking capable, and it is also a Kaleido 3 7-inch panel screens. The other competitor that fits into all of this is the Boox Go Color 7, which is more expensive, but I believe that it is at $240 or $250 US, which is not such a huge difference, and in that price you do have the cover included. As far as the design and build quality goes, well, let's first focus on the design itself, and I have to say that I really like how modern and elegant and understated at the same time this device is. It has a beautiful metal edge going all around the whole device. On the front, I believe that this is glass that is making the screen being basically flush at the surface, so no indentations. On the side we have the page flip buttons, but they can also double as volume buttons or something else that you may want. The buttons themselves have a lovely satisfying clicky feel and really good resistance, and I like the fact that there's enough of a space between them that you don't really have to look which one you're going to be pressing. You actually feel that with your fingertips. There is an equally spaced bezel around the screen, which is color black, and there's a nice grayish type of a side here that just creates a very nice looking design overall. When you flip the device to the back, we have just the back cover. Yes, as you can see, it's fingerprint happy. They probably, you can wipe them off, but you will need a cloth for that. On the side here, we have some kind of indentations, which should help with basically holding the device. So essentially, when you're holding the device in the portrait or in the landscape mode, then this relief basically is right where your fingertips are, and you hold the rest of it like this. And generally speaking, like, the ergonomics of the design are really good. So these perforations in the back, they provide a non-slip surface, and it's fairly comfortable. The distance from the edges to the buttons next and previous is really good, and it's equal, so that's very cool. And also, in addition, on the side here you have the speaker, and you have the power as well the power button on the side here. So I believe that this is a microphone on this side, micro SD card slot, and nothing on the other side. So generally speaking, I think that the design is really good. It's elegant, it's modern, it's functional, it's ergonomic, because the sides here as well are actually quite nice because they're fairly nicely rounded here, and that, again, when you're holding the device like this, you don't have any sharp edges or sharp corners. It all feels nice and organic to kind of hold in your hand like this, but it equally works well in the portrait mode as well. And since this is an auto rotation enabled device, you can you can choose whichever rotation you want and whatever actually suits you best. Now, as far as the build quality goes, well, the materials that are used and the manufacturing precision seems to be quite good, and on the first impression, it's really good. You do take a look at the fine details here, and it does look really good. However, after I spent a little bit more time with this, and I don't know if this is specific to this unit or if every unit is going to have that problem, but there is a persistent squeakiness from this back cover here, and it's as if it's not really fitting the device full on correctly. That's basically what I have, but whenever I was either holding it, and especially this edge here, it just creates this clacky kind of noise, and it's always present. So I've been using this device for quite a while, and it is something that's always present. So if you write on it, it will click. If you hold it a little bit harder, then it will make that click. So that's something that's constantly present. It might just easily be the case that this is just this one unit here, but that is what I have. So that is an indication of some slight build quality imperfections that don't allow a perfect fit in this case. Other than that, everything else feels really, really good and nice and precise. And I don't really have any qualms about the execution of the design itself, because everywhere where you have these things where you could have imperfections or lack of details, like the cornering here and the separation between the screen and the cornering, and also when you have a metal edge, you can easily have these not aligned and maybe sharp, but that's not, none of these things are the case. Everything is nice and smooth and nicely built. So generally speaking, it's really, really good build quality, but except for this fitting of the back cover on this unit. Now, as far as the image quality goes and how this is being calibrated, well, it's really quite good, to be honest, with some issues. So the main issues that I'm going to cover is that when you are in normal mode, for example, because these devices have different update modes or e-ink refresh modes, and you access that by using this icon here, the furthest on the left, on the top panel, that will bring you your e-ink center. And in the e-ink center, you have the defaults here, or presets that you can use. Default, which sets the refresh mode to normal or fast, minimum contrast setting, fairly exploded contrast, vivid enhancements, and color brightness back to 0, and full refresh frequency at 30. And you can see as you change these presets, of course the image is going to change as well, but also these presets will change here. The presets that you have are default, magazine, comic, video, and you also have the ability to have your one custom preset where all of these settings are open to you, and then you can set it up, and that's basically kept but system-wide. It's not kept per app. Generally speaking, the e-ink center I think is okay, but it would be much nicer if we had an option to actually customize all of these presets with an ability to just simply reset back to default, factory default on all of these presets, because I find them to be, all of them, basically a little bit too much exploded, and I would love it if it was possible to just adjust a little bit and adjust the preset, but still use it as the magazine preset, but then it's my magazine preset, my comic preset, my video preset, etc., etc. So the difference between refresh modes is something that's going to cause the device to have less or more ghosting, and it's also going to cause less or more image quality degradation. Naturally, the trade-off is when you have more speed, you will have less image quality, and vice versa. More quality you have, less speed you will have. So that's basically what you have to kind of keep in mind. So now I'm just going to show you how a normal document with some images, basically in graphs, how does it look like in normal or default fast mode, I believe they call it. And it mainly is okay, but there are definitely some issues with how the color is interpreted, because there's this kind of weird dithering going on, and quite a bit, banding actually is going on here, and some strangeness as well. Overall, it's just a little bit strange. The readability of the text in such a smaller one is okay, but also again, this is an image resolution degradation for this mode, and if you're dealing with a PDF that has thinner fonts, even when you flip the document to the landscape mode, the details are a little bit lacking. What lacks in image quality, you actually get in speed, because the responsiveness is really, really good. As you can see, it's like very, very responsive, and it's fairly consistent as far as that responsiveness goes. So that's the trade-off that you have to kind of keep in mind. Now, the next thing that we can actually do is like, okay, maybe I don't like that, so let me just choose magazine type of refresh mode. And you can see as soon as I switch to the magazine refresh mode, that the strange color banding and all of the strangeness in the images is now completely gone, and we have a much nicer looking overall presentation of the image. And actually quite a lot of details are popping out, and you can see the same thing is actually true of the the fonts themselves when presented even in portrait. So if one switches to landscape mode, when the fonts are actually larger, then you can see that the clarity is significantly better than when you are using the default speed mode. So okay, maybe we'll get the access to the top panel. There we go. So the magazine preset is using the HD256 refresh mode, which is the highest quality mode. You also have the comic mode, which switches to Regal, and that's also quite good. It has mainly to do with contrast setting and the vividness settings, but as far as the overall image quality goes, they're very, very similar. The only difference is that when you're doing the Regal type of refreshing, it's a little bit slower, but I think that this mode offers the least amount of ghosting. I'm not 100% sure, but that's at least the impression that I'm getting. And you do get quite a nice clarity here, whether it is that you're using the HD256 or the Regal refresh mode. Those are the ones that you want to use when doing reading on the Bigme B751C. When I was doing my first impressions video, I had the problem of red pixels basically bleeding through even in black and white images or black and white situations such as this one. Well, here you see that we don't have any kind of red pixel bleed in these images. On the contrary, they are really, really nicely rendered, and they offer really beautiful quality actually on this device. And the main difference, I believe, is basically that while I was doing the settings, I was doing the default settings. That's the first impressions. So if I switch to default, which is using the normal fast refresh, this is where we actually start to see those issues that I mentioned, and that you have a very, very prominent bleed of the red pixels. And upon a little bit further inspection, I believe that what's actually happening is that for the default or speed or fast refresh mode, I think the device is cutting down the resolution, but it's cutting it down in such a way that it doesn't necessarily cover all of the red, blue, and green stripes of the stencil that's on top of the Kaleido screen. So I think that that's the bleed that we are seeing here, that basically that's the resolution culling that's happening as an optimization method for the fast refresh mode is not basically in sync with the resolution and the distribution of the color strips on top. If you are doing any kind of reading, I really wholeheartedly recommend that you stay away from the fast method because it simply, there's no reason to, and you won't be getting the maximum out of what this device has to offer. And it does have plenty to offer as far as the image quality goes and the screen quality goes. It really lends itself to be quite a capable and nice looking e-reader, provided that you are using the correct settings and the correct refresh modes. Displaying of full color images as photographs is really, really good as well, and provided that you use the correct settings again. So that is something that you really have to keep in mind. But if you do have the correct settings, the calibration of the colors is really, really good, and the overall ghosting performance, I mean, as you can see, there's really no ghosting whatsoever. It's refreshing very nicely, and there's zero ghosting going on. And these are situations like, for example, from here back to here, that is like ghosting bonanza invitation, but this device is able to handle it really, really well. And especially, for example, if you have a situation like this where we have dark text on a white background, and then you flip over to this page, normally what we would see on Boox devices, for example, is quite a lot of ghosting. Even in the best situations that you can set, you would see quite a bit of ghosting leaving here. That is most definitely not the case with the Bigme B751 or 571. I don't really know anymore which number it is, but with this model, and it really offers wonderful image quality and clarity when you are using the proper refresh modes, and when you're using basically the modes that allow the device to extract the maximum amount that it can. A couple of things that you need to be kind of aware of is that the reader, while it's really capable, and I'm not going to go into all of the functionalities or anything like that, this is not going to be a guide video, but as far as formatting goes, there's one thing that's kind of very strange with this reader as well, because it does have fit diagonal, which is fine. So for example, this is the reset, this is the original fit, right? Or I can reset, that's that. So then I can fit the diagonal, okay, cool. I can fit the vertical, it's okay, and then it's going through this, but here you can see that it's kind of cutting things off. I'm fitting vertical, but I'm getting this empty part going through here, which is kind of strange, and I'm not seeing the entire picture. If you look at this house here, and if I go back to diagonal, well, quite a lot of the image was cut off. And that's not really fitting the vertical now, is it? Okay, then you have fit horizontal, and that's mainly okay, but even there sometimes it looks like it's doing something a little bit strange here and there in some pages, but it's far more consistent than the fit vertical. But then we have fit vertical and horizontal, and what that does is really wrong, because then you have both the faults and inconsistencies of the fitting vertical and fitting horizontal, plus the stretching and distortion of the image, which becomes extremely obvious if you try to use it in a landscape mode. Now this is extremely strange, and while it is a specific mode that maybe, I really struggle in understanding when would this ever be a useful option. And the icon itself is something that a lot of people are going to go for logically. They would like, oh, I want it to fit my screen, and that's what this one looks like, but that's not what it's doing. It's actually fit height and width, but if you want to fit the screen, you need fit the diagonal. So that is something that I think that a lot of users are going to find as a point of confusion, and I'm really not sure. And this is kind of weird, that's not supposed to be there. That's it's keeping, you see, every other page it's now displaying the stretch that we had before as an underlayer. You see that? And that just introduces a theme with this device and with any other Bigme device that I've ever tested, and that is that the overall state of the software is unfortunately really bad. It's not good, it's riddled with bugs, and unfortunately this is something that you'll probably see throughout the video while I'm trying to focus on the image quality and present that in isolation, because it deserves to be presented in isolation, because it shows that the capabilities of this device are really good. So it can be a very good color e-reader for a Kaleido 3 device, right, with all the limitations of the Kaleido 3 panel. But it becomes really difficult to kind of ignore faults like this, especially when they're constant. Like anything that you do, any option that you approach, anything that you attempt to do with this device, you're constantly going to run into bugs, issues, or problems of some sort. And yeah, this is new. I haven't seen that, but again, it's like constantly something new happens. All right, so back to the focus at hand, which is the image quality. So that we've seen regular text, we've seen regular text with documents, we've seen black and white images, we've seen color magazine images, and now I'm going to open up my Kobo, which is again going to demonstrate another portion of issues, because look what happens when I open Kobo, and it always happens. This doesn't have anything to do with repair now or later, but this blinking thing happens with Kobo app all the time. So you open up and there's a blink, 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 blink. And most of the things that you actually perform, they're constantly kind of like this. Okay, so now I need to sign in again. Why? Why would I need to sign in again? Okay. Well, I didn't need to sign in again. Everything was fine. It just kept on blinking and my titles did appear finally. So that's okay. I guess that's better in a way, but it's now it has these things again. Oh, okay. So all I'm trying right now is just to open up a document that I've already downloaded and opened, and now it's falling apart. So I'm trying just to show you, and now the download has been removed. So this is now even more worrying, because this means that the actual storage part, the storage management of this device was, yeah, it got corrupted. It corrupted the account and it corrupted the download here, so I need to download it again, and I'm not really sure. And all I've been trying to do was open up the comic book so that I can show you how it looks and performs in comic books, but now I have to deal with this troubleshooting, and it's showing better than I could the reality of how it actually looks like in real life when you attempt to use a Bigme device. This is what the experience is like all the time, all of the time. Anything that you try to do, everything seems unfinished, everything seems broken, and everything is basically barely holding on, and more often than not has errors. Go figure. All right, it's finally downloaded, so let's try and open it up. There we go, and now it opens up. But it has these blinkings, but still it's opening up to show what I want. Now let me just see the settings. Okay, so we have no front light here, extremely good well lit conditions. That's something that you have to keep in mind. Again and again and again, like, okay, at least now it refreshed. Now the other problem that I'm having is that I did go into settings to customize the buttons to actually function as page flip functions, but it's not working in the Kobo app at the very least. At the end, I'm just going to go back to the other one to see if it works in the Reader app, but in the Kobo, as good as the buttons are, they unfortunately do nothing. Tapping definitely works, and it's able to display dark content really well. It's able to display images really well, and the most impressive thing is basically, again, no ghosting whatsoever. Yes, there's a lot of cleaning up and blinking here and there, so that's something that you definitely see here, but there is zero ghosting. Now, if we switch to different refresh modes, that's of course going to have an impact on how the colors are rendered. So naturally, your inclination might be that you want to, hey, I'm reading a comic, so I'm going to use the comic preset, but that might not be good for color content, because it's so exploded that you're going to lose pretty much all of the details, like all of the details, everything is completely washed out in here. And you can see, especially here, the contrast settings are way too high, and when you go into settings you actually see that the contrast is at 90, vivid enhancement is at 90. It's kind of ridiculous to go in that direction. So instead, what we can do is maybe use like Regal and put everything to 0 just to see like how it normally would look like. And then you get to see this really nice paper-like kind of quality. And then I can, for example, oh, okay, but I would like a little bit more vividness of colors. So I'm gonna enhance them a little bit. Maybe let's put it to 50, right? But still not exploding too much, and I still have details here around the strap and all of these things. So yeah, it's worth it to play around with the settings so that you can find the settings that you like, because the device is actually capable of delivering quite good color images, especially in comic books. Yeah, it seems that the page functionality button, there's something wrong with yeah, how they work in the Kobo. So maybe Kobo app is the one that's wrong, but in the default reader they function perfectly fine. And if we speed up things, so let's say that we go to the default mode just to see the speed of responsiveness of the buttons, it's really good. So we do have quite a lot of responsiveness here. And the interesting bit is that despite the color and the content issues, the ghosting is, well, of course, present in the default mode. You can see definitely the edges of the trees and now the bridge here as well. It's not really that terrible. It is definitely present, but it is not absolutely terrible. That, for example, there's a clear example of ghosting. But as I said, if you do go to regular modes, so let me see here, I messed up. I wanted to go here, HD 256. Then there is no ghosting whatsoever, and the clarity is really good. As far as the front light goes, it has dual control. So we have the intensity of the blue color, and then we have the intensity of the warm color, or cold, right? So fully cold, fully warm. This is not something that I prefer. I prefer that we have intensity on one slider and that we have the color balance warm cold on the other one, because then it's much easier to retain the color balance itself and adjust the intensity. Instead, this is what we have. So this feels a little bit dated. So this is the front light fully maxed out. And you can see that the uniformity is quite good, although there is a darkening, very slight darkening, but there is a darkening on the vertical side here. This is something that's very consistent with pretty much all Kaleido 3 panels so far. So it's not really device specific. This is a Kaleido 3 panel kind of thing. And I don't think that there's anything that Bigme can do to avoid that. As far as the uniformity goes, it looks good. Let's try and see first fully cold, fully warm, and you start to see that darkening even more in that option. But other than that, there's no significant color bleed, light bleed, or anything like that in the corners or anything like that. And it's fairly pleasant type of a color light. It's not the best that I've seen, but it's certainly not the worst. It's nice and clean and pleasant to look at. Cold light is okay, and again we have consistency on the corners, no light bleed, which is a good thing to see. And now we're gonna go to 18 on both of them. So this is the color front light intensity at half, and I've tried to match the manual settings of the camera to match my real world results here, and that they stay constant throughout the whole test here. The focus may get weird, even though it's manual focus, it still might change as far as the illumination is changed, so that's something that may happen, but still nothing I can do about that. This is how it looks like when it's fully turned off in these conditions, and I would personally use it in these conditions. I think that I would actually use it at around half, maybe a bit less. Yeah, something around 15 I think would be a good balance for me to read, maybe a bit too dark. So that again talks about another negative side of the Kaleido 3 panel, which is the inherent darkness of it. So that means that you will need to use the front light at some capacity under most except the ideal conditions when we're talking about this device. But overall, the front light seems to be performing quite well, despite the controls being very limited. And again, there's no dual touch support, so I can't slide 2 sliders at the same time. Nope, you can't, doesn't support that. So it's very limiting in that respect as well. Another thing that's fairly consistent with Kaleido 3 panels is the issue of dead pixels. Now, dead pixels on the quotation marks, because e-ink panels don't really have pixels, they have ink cells. So what we have here are basically empty cells or dead cells that leak through the reflectivity of the front light in certain spots. And we've seen on Kaleido 3 panels that unlike the other ones, the Kaleido 3 panels have much higher degree of imperfections and these dead pixels or dead cells. And of course this is true here as well. I'm not sure how much the camera can pick it up, but you definitely have one here, there's a small one there, there was another one around in the middle, but these three are the most prominent. There's another one, yeah. So there's like these three are most prominent ones. Now, one thing that you need to know is that because this is what is caused by the front light basically going through an area in the screen where the cell isn't there. So the light goes and then reflects back from the reflective panel behind. That's what you get. So that means that when I lower my front light to situations that I would normally use, these actually start to disappear, because then they are no longer reflecting as much because the intensity of the light is lower, etc., etc. So in real world situations, I don't think that I would be able to notice them. I still see them a little bit, but I can only see them in a fully dark page. In a normal page like this, there's absolutely no way that I can see them. So this will depend on how big of a hole it is, how prominent it is, where it's located, etc., etc. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. So we've seen Boox devices suffer from this, we've seen Kobo devices suffer from this, we've seen now Bigme devices suffer, and it's an e-ink company kind of thing. They produce these panels and they deliver them like this to their the manufacturers, and that's what they have to deal with. So Bigme is not exempt from that downside of the Kaleido 3 panel either. As far as the battery life goes on the Bigme B751C, it's pretty much good. I've done my standardized testing only in the reader though, and I had to do it manually because the auto flip page function didn't really work. It's there, but it does nothing. So that's another thing, you know, another situation of trying to use the system and it telling you, hey, I got these features, but they don't really work, or they work janky and all that kind of stuff. So, but that's a leitmotif of this device, unfortunately. But yeah, I did the manual page flipping every 20 seconds in different front light conditions so that I can measure it. And with the front light at 100%, so fully maxed out, the device was spending around 12% of battery time per hour, which means that you can expect to see around 8.3 hours of consistent page flipping with the front light set at maximum and with the Wi-Fi turned on, which is quite a good result, especially for a smaller device like this. Now, when you put that front light down to 50%, then the device was averaging out at around 33 hours per charge of continually flipping pages every 20 seconds. And when you turn the front light all the way off, then you can see that the number climbs to 60 hours or more per charge of doing that continuous activity. So that is quite a good result, especially for a portable device like this. So nothing really bad there. But the thing to kind of keep in mind is that while you do get excellent results with the front light turned off, the inherent darkness of the Kaleido 3 panel means that in most of the situations you will be forced to use that front light at some capacity or another. So the more realistic thing that you figure that you may kind of expect to see is somewhere between 30 and 40 hours of continuous reading like that per charge, which is still definitely great. Now, I didn't do my standard writing test for 1 hour with different conditions, mainly because the writing experience and this pen are so bad that it's something that I just simply could not do. I could not bring myself to finish this, and this is not a device that can do this. More on that in that section, but this is the reason why that part of the measurement is lacking. Well, speaking of the thing, now we might as well speak about the pen first. So this device does not come with a Wacom EMR, Wacom layer under the screen. No, this is a capacitive pen. So that means this is an active pen that needs a battery. So it has a quad A battery inside that will need to be replaced. It's not rechargeable or anything like that. There is no battery indication level of the pen anywhere that I can see. So there's no indication here, is it green, blue, maybe it turns red when it's low on battery or something like that, but other than that, there's no indication whatsoever. This is a metal build pen, so it's fairly heavy. The shape, it's good. It's round on one side, flat here, but the edges are too sharp. This is far too sharp, especially for a metal type of pen. The balance is okay. It's kind of in the middle, which is okay. So the battery is somewhere around here, so that's fine. It has 2 buttons. And unfortunately, they're not 2 different functionalities. It has one button is the functionality, the function button. The second one is the button that you actually have to press to wake the pen up pretty much almost every single time, which is completely ridiculous because most of the active pens have an ability to either sense when they are being moved and then auto wake, or if they're close to the device, then they know to also auto wake. I have not seen that function here. I think that this functions in the most primitive possible way, which is you press it and then it stays on as long as it's active. And when it's not active, like not pressing, I guess, or doing something, for a little while it turns itself off. And then when you go back to kind of write again, it doesn't do anything, so you have to press the button and then it starts working. The nib itself is not a regular standard, it's their unique standard. Yeah, that you get 2, I guess, extra nibs in the packaging with the pen, if I remember correctly. And it's an okay feeling nib, it's a soft, kind of almost felt like feeling nib, but the precision is really not there. It's quite rounded and it's quite wide, so yeah, it leaves quite a bit to be desired. The ergonomics of the pen are not good for me, not at all, because you have the slipperiness of the metal, you have the weight of the metal, you have the sharp edges here, and then when you actually need to write and use it, it is very uncomfortable to such a degree that I found it almost impossible to use it without pain after maybe 5 minutes of use. So whenever I would write more than like 3 to 5 minutes with this pen, my hand and the wrist would start hurting and or cramping, and that's the result why I didn't do the battery test, because that would involve an hour or 2 hours of continuous writing, and I just don't see that as a viable option at all with this pen. So yeah, that's something to definitely keep in mind. The pen has no magnets or anything like that, so it's just, it is what it is. And then we get to the note-taking capabilities. So let's start on a fresh page here with a writing example, shall we? All right, before I zoom out, we need to take a look at a good close look at this. First and foremost, as I say here, this is a writing example on the B751C device. It functions, yes. Does the pen function with this? Can you write with it? Yes, you can. But that's pretty much it, because it is so deeply uncomfortable that even this that I was doing, I feel quite a bit of pain here in this part of the wrist. It is just a very unhealthy combination to use for writing, and I wouldn't recommend this for writing for anyone for that reason alone. But unfortunately, there's more reasons to go against this. So the second thing is that because this is not an EMR pen, this is a capacitive pen, the latency is not the best. It's not terrible, but it's not the best. But that's not the worst thing. The worst thing is, like, this is not my handwriting. This is not my handwriting even remotely close. The device is doing so much optimizations and so much processing that this is a horrific interpretation of my handwriting. And that creates not a result that I'm completely disconnected from the device because the latency is there, the precision is not there, the end result that I wrote that I can see is not what I wrote. It's just like really not that good. Another thing to keep in mind, you absolutely have to calibrate the pen before you use it, because otherwise, and you have to do that quite often, I've seen, because it starts to drift, and then sometimes the stuff where you write actually starts appearing pretty much offset on the screen. And yeah, that calibration needs to be done more often than what I'm used to on this device. But when you do it, you do get that precision kind of zeroed in, but over time it kind of just drifts apart even further. So everything put together, this is one of the worst writing experiences that I have experienced on a device of this sort in quite a while. I'm not sure if it's the worst, but it's one of the top 3 worst writing experiences that I have witnessed so far. I think the worst one has to be Kobo Ellipsa 2E. And this one is either close second or the third place, because Libra Color is also really bad. So those 3 are kind of fighting it out for the title of which one is the absolute worst writing experience of them all. Now this is an unfortunate fact because the note-taking or the notebook itself has lots of capabilities, but the writing experience and the pen are basically the main hurdle to actually use any of these functionalities in any more serious and a long-term scenario. However, let's say that even if you don't mind the input difficulties and for some reason, like this is, you're willing to go through it with this, then you encounter the UI, and the UI is the second hurdle. And it's just basically, it feels like the user is thrown into the menus and you have no idea what is a label, what is a tool, or what it is that you're supposed to do. Because, for example, if you look at this and you have like, okay, these are there, so there we have this happening, then you have suddenly insert here, which I don't know what it does. Insert, and it has ... If you tap on insert, it doesn't do anything, but it does have a page underneath it. So I guess you can insert a page, and then it's like, oh yeah, that's for inserting a page. But was this supposed to be like insert page as a one thing, or just insert and then functionalities, what you can insert into the document? If so, why is the template there? Okay, maybe you can insert page, insert template, insert shape, insert photo, insert text, and then the dot and lines. And then you start to understand, oh, that's what they meant. They meant that insert is a label, then the ... to ... is the section, and these are the icons that fall under the insert thing. This is too convoluted for any semblance of intuitiveness in a user interface. And second of all, it's all just so jumbled up that it just feels like a constant attack on the user and a constant distraction, and I don't find it inviting in any way, shape, or form. It's just every time I try to use it, the user interface was basically being completely unfriendly and unapproachable. That's the overall impression that I just kept having with this device, unfortunately, in all respects. So let's say that you don't mind even the UI, so you persevere, so you go through the input difficulties, you persevere and you get used to the UI, and then it's like you're fine with that. Unfortunately, in the end, the only reward that awaits you is basically instability of the app and functionalities, random crashes, random flashes, random shutdowns, random page flips, and all of these kinds of things, and further disappointments. So I honestly really tried really hard to find a single aspect of the note-taking side of this device that I found enjoyable, intuitive, or inviting to use, but I could not find it. There wasn't a single thing that I could point to that was actually good. And here I have in my notes to perform OCR test, because I genuinely didn't do an OCR text. So let's do text recognize. Let's see how that functions. And again, that's going to be a difficulty because, yeah, recognizing, please wait. What? Oh, it's still, okay. D.E.S.T.A is a writing example on the B751C device. It functions, but is so deeply uncomfortable that I do not want this to continue at all. And the precision is terrible as well. Actually, this is good because it's easier for me. It's very difficult for me to understand all of these interpretations that it did, but it was able to do that. So that's a good sign. And it just shows that there are things in here that are good. There are things here that are usable, and there certainly could be usable, but there's so many obstacles here in the way that in order to actually use them, I don't know. I really don't know that I would ever be able to use this in any way and shape or form. And another thing is that while I was writing, I kept feeling the edge here really hard, and it felt very uncomfortable. And of course the clackiness and the crackiness of the back panel. And here again we see the UI unfinished state. I mean, where is the padding? Where are the margins in the button as a general UI rule for the text that goes into a button? This is... I was able to complete the D.E.S.T.A test on the Bigme B751C with its dedicated pen. This is something that I was unable to actually complete on the LibreColor, unfortunately, because the pen just would not keep writing properly in that setup because it was very thick and things like that. But this one thankfully had that flattening, and then it was possible to actually use it in this properly. So I was able to get the enough passes to get a good result. And Bigme B751C performs yeah, quite low down. It's by no means terrible because 46.67 milliseconds of latency is not bad, and especially it's not bad at all for a capacitive style of pen. However, it is still type of latency that you do feel, and it is the type of latency that feels a little bit old-fashioned, and it's trailing. And when you do write, when you combine with everything else that is associated with writing on this device, then it does actually matter. So it just adds to that sense of disconnectness. So on its own, the writing latency on the Bigme B751C is not bad at all, but it being a capacitive, using a capacitive pen technology, you can't really hope for it to perform any better than this. As far as the screen friction goes, when compared to the paper, Bigme 751C had quite a good actual surface. So it's a shame because it has elements that could make it it's a much better device, but it's not, because its writing surface has the friction, which is of 42.15% of friction of the paper, which means that it's somewhere along the line like the MobiScribe origin and a little bit more kind of paper-like than the Note Air 3C, which is definitely on a good side of things, and that's why its reflectivity as well is quite good. However, unfortunately, you can really not reap the benefits of any of these things because of that pen and the technology that's used, and that's really, really unfortunate. Generally speaking, one of the main impressions that you're starting to actually maybe see here is that the user interface and the user experience are a mess. The overall impression is one of overwhelming complexity and unintuitiveness. It's not all bad. There are definitely ideas and elements that I think are good, and they could work really well, and some of them actually do work well. And a really good example of that is, for example, the side menu options in the home screen. And that's a really good thing. And the easily accessible e-ink center, for example, I really like that point. So there are definitely good elements. However, these concepts are then completely overshadowed by the sheer amount and density of options that's stuffed everywhere. I mean, everywhere you look, there's something happening. We have like this tiny section here as an empty piece, and this tiny section here as an empty part for your brain to relax just a little bit, just to have a tiny hope of relaxing. Everything is an icon, everything is a different icon, and everything is everywhere, constantly jumbled up. And this is something that I've customized in the settings. So you do have an option to customize these things, because I had to increase the distance between these two, because the original one is so dense that even here you didn't have any kind of room, but everything was just kind of cramped together. And it just gives me this feeling of claustrophobia and complete and utter unfriendliness as far as the user experience goes. Now, when I mention settings, the settings window is the exemplifying case of what it is that I'm talking about. Please take a look at this. Look at this. This is crazy. This is beyond overwhelming. Yes, all of the information is here, and there are definitely a lot of info here and a lot of options that you can go through, but it is incredibly overwhelming the way that it is actually implemented. So good luck finding options that you are looking for, because it's very, very unintuitive. And I am using the latest available update at the moment, which is D544, so it's the latest version. So it's not something that's changed or will be changed or anything like that. So yeah, the overall impression is not a good one. It's not an inviting one. And for me, the end result is basically an environment that I simply do not enjoy spending time in. One that I find completely distracting at most of the times and deeply uncomfortable. It took me a while to pinpoint what was the main cause for such an impression. And yeah, it's the fact that what I just said is that almost every part of the screen real estate is peppered with icons and options. So there's insufficient amount of empty space, breathing room for the eyes and for the mind to relax. And this is a subjective perception, so that is how I have perceived it, and at least how it affected me personally. So I recognize that this is a completely subjective matter, but I'm simply sharing what I experience and what my perception of this whole thing is. As far as the cover goes, I've talked about it in the unboxing, but I will shortly cover it here as well. So we have a plastic flexible bucket here with really thin edges on the sides, and that is just an invitation to wait for it to crack and not be able to actually hold your device. I don't see this surviving a single fall. I might be mistaken, but that's how at least it looks like to me. The plus side is that because it's so thin and so flexible, is that it's quite easy to pop the device in. Other positive side is that it has openings for the speaker and for the charger here. So everything that you need, there's like a power button, everything is accessible, even the micro SD card slot, even while your device is in the cover. The negative side is that the way it has been designed is that we don't have the connecting points of the front cover here on the sides. It's just here in the middle, and that is an invitation for this to constantly kind of happen even when it's on its own. Another thing is that there's no magnet to hold the cover on the front, and there's nothing to hold the cover in the back. Positive side, it does accommodate for it has an indentation that accommodates for the buttons here, and it also has the auto sleep and auto wake up function. The negative thing is, again, the pen loop that is now part of the front cover, and this is a really heavy pen, and this is just a bad design, because as soon as you hold it, the heaviness of the pen, the weight of the pen basically exerts pressure here, and because there's nothing holding the cover in this one, it always droops like this. So this is something that you're going to be seeing all the time, and even if that doesn't bother you, when you flip it back here, it doesn't really flip back to the side of the device, it flips back to the top. So then it's like this, and then you have to push it. You can, but you have to push it to the side, and then it will be able to fit the pen on the side. But even then, it's just going to try and push back here. There's no functionality to use it as a stand of any kind, so no portrait stand, no landscape stand. This is what it is, and the added weight that is on the top here, no magnet holding it, and it's at the end of the cover. That means that it's quite a bit of a thing to open up and close, because there's a lot of inertia and the centrifugal force doing its thing, because we have the weight at the end of the arc that's going. So overall, yes, the cover is there, but if you're resounded to not use this as a note-taking device, which I think that you really shouldn't use it as a note-taking device and not use this pen, then this cover could make sense, and then you can just cut this thing off, and then I think it would be at least a lot better, because then it would do things in a good way. But overall, nothing really special about it. It looks pretty, but it's not a good design, and the execution leaves quite a bit desired. Yeah. All right, so it's the conclusion time for the Bigme B751C. And as usual, let's start with the cons. Well, the first con would be terrible writing experience due to the lack of precision and, yeah, brutal strokes optimizations. Pen is painful to use for anything more than simply writing down a sentence or two, or maybe underlining a paragraph or two in a text file. Pen is cumbersome to use because very often you need to activate it by pressing the button in order for it to actually start working. Reader formatting that stretches and deforms rendering in a document, completely unintuitive, and I don't even see the reason why it would be there in the first place. The user interface and the user experience is probably one of the most, if not the worst, that I have ever experienced. At best, this could be characterized as a proof of concept, but it is nowhere near what a finished, polished release candidate should and must be. Overall, the entire system feels like it's barely holding on, and it can fall apart at any second. So blinking apps, sudden exits to the main screen, unpredictable flashes, accidental touches, remnants of the garbage underneath the pages as you've seen before. It just doesn't seem finished. The build quality, while it is good, it doesn't instill 100% confidence, mainly because of that backplate, which at least on the unit that I have, made and keeps making the cracking noises from the get-go. The usual Kaleido tree issues with the dead pixel or the missing cells, that is something that this unit will suffer from as well as the inherent darkness of the Kaleido tree panel. Now, this is not a particularly just this model's problem, but it is any device that's using this panel will have these two negative points. The cover design is not really practical nor well engineered. And the activation of the Google Play Store activation process, if you're interested in that, you can actually check out my unboxing video. But that is a confusing and convoluted process, even more so than on other devices that also require the GSFID re-registration process. Now on to the pros. Well, the design is very beautiful and a very modern looking device. The buttons for next and previous, they have excellent tactile feel and it's very satisfactory to use them, and they're quite precise. It has a very competitive price. It has very good reader capabilities, has very good battery life, has a really good image quality when configured properly, because the presets are way too aggressive to begin with, but it does have enough options in the e-ink center to allow you for creating a preset that really has excellent image quality and excellent ghosting performance. Which leads me to another pro, which is the good and easily accessible e-ink controls. And while it would be nice to actually have the ability to customize the already made presets and save the customizations to those presets, even as it is now, it's quite functional and quite usable. And the fact that it can use the Google Play Store, so you can install apps that use Google Play services and all of the other Google Play Store apps, even though, as I mentioned in the cons, the GSFID registration process is more convoluted and a little bit more confusing than on other devices that require the same procedure. So Bigme B751C in summary. On paper and as a photograph, and if you just look at the device like this, it has a lot to promise. It promises a lot and it delivers some things. Like, let's not beat around the bush. The image quality that they deliver here and the ghosting quality they deliver here is really good, like properly good, and that's something that you definitely can attribute as a proper objective positive of this device. The unfortunate reality is that almost everything else about this device, apart from its design, it leaves a lot to be desired. As you've seen, I wanted to like some things about this device and I wanted to be able to actually recommend some aspects of it, and the reader side of things definitely could be recommended, but the overall instability, but again, and then I get into the whole problem of, but the whole system is just not there. And that, I think, is the biggest disappointment of this one, because it shows so much promise, but currently as it is, it would be a pass from me. Well, okay, I hope that you found the video informative and or useful. If you did, please like and subscribe and ding the notification bell in the description below to get notified when new videos come out on my deep guide. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!